After Verstappen won 4 of the opening 5 races this season, no one thought there was a chance of a title battle. A perfect repeat of 2023 was expected by everyone, and yet, as the season has progressed, the performance advantage that Red Bull held has diminished to nothing. At the sharp end of the grid, every race is a slogfest of a fight where nothing but perfection from the driver and the team will guarantee the win. With 4 second places and a race win in the last 6 Grand Prix, Lando Norris looks to be Max Verstappen's likeliest contender, but with a 69-point deficit, surely the gap is already insurmountable. Red Bull have taken a massive blow in their title battle, and some people are starting to think that they might be beatable, so let's check it out. The Spanish Grand Prix was another race of what-ifs for Lando Norris. After an exceptional qualifying lap which put him in pole position, he had every opportunity to take the race win on Sunday. However, a poor run down to turn 1 destroyed his chances before he'd even made it through 2 turns. George Russell came around the outside of him into turn 1, it stopped Lando from keeping his speed through the fast right-hander. If he had had the space to stay alongside Verstappen, he would have been ahead coming out of turn 2, but the outstanding move from George Russell ruined all of that. Stuck in third behind the slower Mercedes, Norris lost an estimated 4 seconds of race time compared to Verstappen, and that was that. Sadly for Lando, his pole position problems aren't limited to last weekend's Spanish Grand Prix. With 4 starts from the front of the grid, he's failed to hold on to that position for the first lap every single time. That is a weakness he'll have to address because race wins are there for the taking, but it will require perfection. Especially as Red Bull's dominance under the current ground effect regulations appeared to be over in recent weeks, as both Ferrari and McLaren took victories over the champions. But while Red Bull delivered on the expectation that it would return to being the benchmark team on a traditional circuit in Barcelona, Verstappen was fortunate to win. On the team radio at the end of the race, Max sounded as pumped up by the win as he has done for the past couple of seasons. His comments post-race reflected just how challenging the win had been. "I think as a whole package performance, we had a good race," Verstappen reviewed. "We really tried to maximize everything, but I do think that we're struggling a bit for the, optimum pace, lacking a bit of tire deg towards the end of every stint. So it wasn't a very straightforward, easy race. I mean, Lando was catching quite hard at the end, but luckily it worked out. It was just enough." Gone are the races where Max could cruise to a 30-second victory without really trying. He has at times looked like he's driving in a different class of car in F1, but now that advantage is gone. While other drivers pushing Max for victories is an indicator of just how good the rest of the grid's development has been, perhaps it is Sergio Perez's performances that show it the most. For the opening 5 races of the season, Sergio Perez looked like the dependable rear gunner that Red Bull wanted him to be. His 4 podiums required excellent driving and a good performance in qualifying, but he wasn't ever properly challenged. Since then, though, he's looked much further off the pace. Perez is not a bad driver. Over the first 5 races of the season, he was on average 0.35 seconds slower in qualifying than Verstappen. Since the other teams have started to bring upgrades, though, that gap looks huge. If he'd been 0.35 seconds slower than Verstappen in qualifying in Spain, he would have only gained 2 grid positions. Mercedes, Ferrari, and McLaren are just so much stronger now than they were in those opening 5 races. The reason that Max is still winning races at the moment is because he's Max, not because the RB20 is the clear best car on the grid anymore. Speaking on the Checkered Flag podcast, the BBC's Andrew Benson said after Spain, "Is the Red Bull still the best car? If you walk around the paddock and talk to the team bosses, I've had a couple of very senior people in Formula 1 this year say to me, I think Verstappen's got 2 or 3 tenths on everybody as a driver." Verstappen had to drive a perfect race in Spain to win, but if it weren't for Russell's excellent turn 1 move on both cars, a perfect race probably wouldn't have cut it. In Canada, he was exceptional again in tricky conditions, but if McLaren had called in Lando on lap 26 for a pit stop behind the safety car, instead of waiting another lap, he would have retained track position ahead of Verstappen instead of being P3. A position he could have won from. Back at Imola, he had to be perfect again. It would be harsh to say Norris lost the victory in Imola, but against a more fragile opponent, a victory could have been on the cards. Verstappen has been perfect, but Red Bull's in-season development has been far from it, and that is becoming a problem. The three-time F1 champion has claimed that McLaren has introduced more impactful upgrades than Red Bull this term and called on his team to regain the impetus. I always knew that it was going to be very close, and McLaren is just doing a really good job. They brought a lot of good upgrades to their car, and it really just seems to work. And from our side, we've brought things to the car, but probably not as much lap time as what others have been bringing to their car. So now it's up to us to try and find a bit more, try to get that little jump ahead again. Because I think clearly today we just lacked a bit of that outright pace. The Dutchman also divulged that Red Bull's previous strength of being faster than its competitors once degradation became a factor in races has now been dispelled. A fact that was especially obvious in Spain and Imola, where Lando Norris quickly closed gaps to Max late on in the race. Also, just when we had to push, we just couldn't look after the tyres like Lando, for example, could, he added. So these kind of things are quite crucial on most of the tracks where you have a bit of deg. While Norris chasing down Verstappen is still a problem, the points gap between the two will need to come down significantly before anyone is willing to make the bold prediction that Max will be beaten to the driver's title. However, in the race for the Constructors' crown, Red Bull look far more vulnerable. Over the last 4 weekends, McLaren have outscored Red Bull by 113 points to 91. If they can keep that up, then the Constructors' Championship will go right down to the final race. If Lando can start taking a few of the race wins that are up for grabs, then McLaren might even be favourites for it. Mercedes are also making inroads, scoring just 4 points less than Red Bull in the last 4 races. With that in mind, Verstappen has stressed that Red Bull must focus on its own competitiveness rather than the steps its rivals are making. It all depends on what the teams are going to bring to their car, he assessed. I mean, I cannot look into what they're doing at the moment. The only thing that I can control is within our team, what we're going to bring. And that's what I'm focused on. You know, of course you can dream about potential improvements from other teams, but that's just a waste of energy. Red Bull will of course have more upgrades coming, but without Adrian Newey to help, can they be good enough to stop the advance of McLaren? While Max is worried about Red Bull's upgrades, McLaren are looking at another weakness which is helping them to a championship title. McLaren CEO Zak Brown has stated the performance differential between Red Bull's drivers is an opportunity for McLaren in the Formula 1 title battle. Verstappen's teammate Sergio Perez has struggled for form of late, scoring just 8 points across the last 4 races. In comparison, Verstappen has bagged 83 in the same period, while Norris has scored 67. Speaking to Sky F1, Zak Brown highlighted the tight nature of the current pecking order poses an even greater challenge as it looks to reel in Red Bull. "We took a small chunk out of Ferrari, Mercedes got a few points on us," Brown said. "Ferrari is definitely within reach, but so is Mercedes and Red Bull. If Perez picks up the pace, then they'll be very hard to compete against." So I think we got it to kind of take advantage of the fact that at the moment, Max is at the front and Sergio is running in the points. That might give us an ability to claw into that lead a bit. The fact that we all thought this was over at the first race, I think we all got that wrong. With Lando Norris looking like a serious threat to Verstappen and Piastri comfortably outscoring Perez over the last 5 races, Red Bull are in trouble in the Constructors' Championship. They can rely on Verstappen to be perfect, but can they rely on their car development? Can they bring the upgrades to reopen the gap at the front of the field? Or are McLaren now in a race against time to overturn the early season points advantage their rivals gained? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.